Hi, everybody. This is Leanne Huang at Chapin Hall, and I want to welcome you to our Policy Mentor Introductory Webinar. We are going to spend some time talking all about policy mentors, what you do, what to expect, give you some helpful information. I have Mickey with me here in the room, and Colleen is also going to present some information on the webinar, and we also have two guests who will talk about their policy mentor and fellow relationship. So let me first go through the agenda. I'll introduce everybody on the fellowship team, talk about the purpose of the fellowship, our expectations for fellows, which we just want to make sure the fellows all know this information already. We just wanted to let the policy mentors know. We'll talk about some of the strategies we use for the fellowship program, and then we'll get really into the meat of the policy mentor role and the expectations and how to make that a successful relationship. Okay, our next slide shows our fellowship team here at Chapin Hall. Dr. Deborah Darrow, who is unfortunately not able to join us today. She's the fellowship chair and provides leadership for the program. I am Leanne Huang. I'm the fellowship manager. I've been involved in the fellowship from the beginning. You all have been interacting with Sarah, who is unfortunately leaving us at the end of this week for a new career opportunity. So I'll be taking over the management of the fellowship. Colleen is our evaluation coordinator. She'll can give you a little information about herself in a minute when she talks. And then Mickey, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi, everybody. This is Mickey Anderson. I'm the project assistant here on the fellowship team. And yeah, I'll be talking more about the communication strategies throughout the rest of this webinar, and I'm excited to get to know all of you.
Okay, just a quick review of the fellowship purpose. I know you all read this as you were applying for the fellowship, but it's to develop leaders in the prevention field, increase interdisciplinary knowledge and research. This is something that we're very excited about. Fellows really seem to enjoy looking at similar problems from different perspectives and really learning a lot through that. We hope to foster the creation of new knowledge and new strategies to prevent child maltreatment and to promote child well-being. And lastly, increase the visibility and the effectiveness of the field. So that is why we're doing this work. Let me turn it now to Colleen, who is going to talk a little bit about the expectations that we have for fellows. Colleen, maybe you're muted.
Hi, can you hear me?
We can.
Okay, thank you. Sorry about that. So, hi everyone. As Leah mentioned, I am Colleen Schlecht. I'm the evaluation coordinator for the fellowships. I've been in that role for about 5 years now. Yep, so we have a few expectations for the fellows during their 2 years as an active Doris Duke Fellow. We expect them to actively participate in some of the different activities that we have for them throughout the 2 years, and we will go into more details about those activities in a little bit. But those are, a couple of meetings in person a year, webinars, and then some other activities with small groups and other learning opportunities that we provide through the network. We also have some internal evaluation activities that I oversee, and we expect the fellows to participate in those. And those include some interviews at different points in time, as well as some publication and presentation submissions. And then we expect them to be continuously communicating and engaging with their mentors, both their academic and their policy mentors. We will talk in a little bit about a policy mentor goal sheet that all of the fellows are aware of at this point, and we will, if you have not heard about it from your fellow, you will see it today and hear about it soon. But it's a way for us to, and for you all to make sure you have a productive and useful relationship with your fellow over the 2 years. And then we expect fellows to continue to make progress on their dissertation during the 2 years.
Great, thank you. Thank you, Colleen. So now we're going to get into, not just a few, all of our major activities that we undertake in the fellowship. And these are our strategies to really build a strong program for the fellows. So we'll talk about our meetings, our different meetings that we have, webinars, how we communicate with everybody in the fellowship, mentors and fellows. We'll talk about the small groups that fellows are placed in, and then obviously we'll talk about the mentor component. Nikki, can you take us through the meeting?
Yeah, absolutely. So meetings and events that we have for the fellows throughout the year, one of our biggest ones and the ones that we do in person, we really do this to help kind of build networking. We bring in experts to, do workshops or presentations to sharpen skills and just create a really good community where networking is provided. So one of those events is at the annual meeting. That's for for 30 current fellows. So that's 2 different cohorts, Cohort 8 and Cohort 7. And we'll meet in September, the 12th through the 14th. The Cohort 8 is there the 12th and 13th of September, and we'll be here at the University of Chicago. So that is a great time for fellows to get to know one another and start building those connections. And the next meeting that we do is a mid-year meeting, similar to the annual meeting, but it's at a different location. This upcoming year in 2019 will be at Arizona State University, and we'll have a great time for networking as well, and different presenters and activities there. And then, so those are for the current fellows is required, and graduated fellows, it is optional. But those are 2 events that are mainly for the fellows. Another events that we do throughout the year is that we do receptions or networking events, some get-togethers. They're typically at conferences. Some examples in 2018 were that we were at we were at APSAC, and we do a couple other locations throughout the year as well. So whenever those come up, we will make sure to let all, not only the fellows, but mentors know as well. You are invited to join if you're able to. And normally we'll send out information on where it's located, hopefully pretty close to the events and the time, and what will be provided there. So we are looking forward to sharing those opportunities as they come up. And
so we also, sorry. Going to get into the webinars, another activity that we provide about 3 to 4 times a year. And the purpose of these really is for information sharing, really, and to provide some new information in the field of child well-being to fellows on a variety of different topics, and really expose and connect fellows with both national leaders in the field and also with other fellows, their peers, mentors as well, because we often have both academic and policy mentors as the presenters on these webinars. And oftentimes mentors and fellows will present together. So it's a kind of nice product they put together and present to the fellows' peers. All fellows are expected to attend. It's one of those expectations that I just mentioned a little bit ago. And the topics really are, as I mentioned, very broad around the field of child well-being. Recently we had one on networking. We've had a few on effective communication with advocates and state legislatures, state policymaking. We had NCSL talk to them about their organization as well as their early learning fellows program. So if there is a topic, and we'll talk about this in a little bit, but if there is a topic that you and your fellow would like to present together, we absolutely welcome you to share that with us, and we can make that happen.
Great. So moving on to the communication strategies, here's a list of the online or electronic means of communication. So first, starting with the website, which is dorisdukefellowships.org. On there, you'll find information not only about the fellows, but we also do have the mentor information there as well. You'll find highlights, different news updates, newsletters, and general information. So if there's any updates or questions that you have about the website, whether it comes to you personally about your your career information or your contact information, feel free to email me. I'm happy to make those updates. The next communication tool that we have is called the Ning Network, and this is just for our fellows. So it's this online platform that allows for a lot of great interaction, great networking, resource sharing, event information, RSVP, job opportunities, grant opportunities, etc. So it's a great place for information for the fellows to kind of all be in one place and to connect with other fellows as well. And then we also do a monthly newsletter. This is distributed through email, so this is also published on our website. But this is a great place for including updates not only on fellows, but what the fellowship is up to, different mentors doing spotlights or highlights on individuals, as well as policy information that can be highlighted as well. So there's a lot of great news coming on a monthly basis from the fellowship network and fellowship team. So we send that out to the fellows, to all mentors, our advisory board, and then Chapin Hall staff here as well at the University of Chicago, so that everybody's informed. So definitely make sure if you have any updates or anything you'd like us to share or to share with the network, feel free to email me, and I'm happy to include those within the newsletters.
Great, thank you, Mickey. I'm going to talk just for a minute about the small groups. For the policy mentors on the webinar, you will probably not be involved in small groups or might be, but we wanted to make sure that you all understood what the sort of structure of the fellowship was for the fellows that you'll be working with. So these small groups are something we started with the very first cohort. We assign each of the fellows in a cohort to one of 3 small groups. We assign them to groups based on their research interests broadly, not necessarily just their dissertation topic, but more broadly defined than that. We make sure that they're interdisciplinary, those groups are. As you can see on the slide, the purpose is to learn to collaborate with folks from other disciplines, to share information with one another. And the last 2 reasons why we created these were really just to help fellows make connections with each other with a less intimidating group of people. So instead of having, one person trying to get to know 14, they only have to try to get to know 4, at least initially. These small groups have turned out to be a real source of social support and, I don't know what you call it, dissertation support or survival strategy support group for making it through your dissertation. They're often the strongest relationships for fellows across the cohort. We do ask that each small group work on a project during their time in the fellowship. The fellows on the call have already gotten a lot more information about this, and we'll get even more at the annual meeting next month. At some point, if you're interested in helping a small group or have a project that they may be interested in working on, please either talk to your fellow or you can reach out to Mickey or me or Colleen. We have had small groups definitely work on projects in collaboration with one policy mentor, 1 or 2 policy mentors, where they've had an interesting opportunity at their organization or in their communities that a small group could help with. So we wanted to make sure you knew about that. Let's see, Colleen, can you introduce the policy mentors to kind of our overall mentor strategies?
Sure. So the mentor strategy is an important one in the fellowships, and we feel the mentors play a pretty integral role for the fellows in their experience with the fellowship. We now have 3 types of mentors. We have each fellow has an academic mentor. This is often their dissertation chair. It is obviously a relationship they come into the fellowship already having. And the main role and expectation of the academic mentor is to continue to provide support for the fellows as they complete their dissertation and their work towards completing that, as well as they're exploring what they want to do next and helping facilitate any networking opportunities and explore career options that might be a good fit for them. there are obviously the policy mentors, you all, and you all play a real important role in helping fellows really start or continue to think about conducting translational research and how to conduct research that really has significant policy or practice implications, or to have them even think about that. We have a variety of, in the past we've had a variety of both fellows' exposure and experience with this. Some have thought about it more intentionally, and others it has not been a major focus of their dissertation or research yet. And we have a variety of relationships, meaning that some come in with policy mentors they've worked with and have a past with, and others it's a pretty new relationship. So, but overall, these are a pretty useful and productive and very beneficial component and relationship that fellows take out of the fellowship. We get feedback often about how useful and helpful this relationship is for the fellows in advancing their research and their interest in the field. We will talk a little bit more about kind of what your specific role is. So I will just move on into the peer mentors, which is something we started a few years ago, where each incoming fellow, so your cohort 8 fellows, will be paired up with a graduated fellow, someone that has gone through the program and has left the program, so someone from cohorts 1 through 6. And these peer mentors, it's a more casual relationship. They can determine how often and how they meet, what they talk about, but similar to the small groups, we found these to be really helpful for fellows seeking advice on challenges they're facing in their dissertation process or in the job search process. Fellows seeking clinical internships, for example, and getting feedback on that process from others who have gone through it. So it's more of a kind of advice and another way to get some kind of peer, just kind of peer discussions and advice that they may need in this process. The policy mentors do provide, we ask you for what we call a progress report at the halfway point. So next summer, we will ask for a quick write-up from you. Questions revolve around how often you're meeting with your fellow and what the discussions are around, and then progress on your goal sheet, which I think Leanne will talk in more detail about in a few minutes.
Great, thank you, Colleen. This next slide is just showing you who all the policy mentors are for Cohort 8. So you have it all in one place. All the mentors are also listed on our website, so you can see each other there. So I'm going to go into a little bit more depth about the policy mentor role in the fellowship. Again, ask us any questions. The fellows have been given some of this information, so you all can talk together after the webinar, and if you have any questions or concerns, let us know. So one of the most basic responsibilities is to maintain regular communication with fellow. We really recommend at least once a month. Sometimes people meet more frequently than that, but we do ask that happen once a month. And it's probably somewhere else in the slides, but where I'm supposed to talk about this, but the suggestion is that you set those meetings up in advance. Like, go ahead and put those on your calendar for this school year once a month and pick what works. Your fellow can initiate those calendar appointments, or you can if you're more comfortable with that. But we ask that those get put on your calendar, because otherwise you won't end up being able to make those work. All right, the second thing is establish goals for the partnership. I'm going to go into depth to talk about the goal sheet in a few minutes, so we'll talk about that in a minute. So one thing that the policy mentors have been very helpful on is providing feedback on the dissertation. It's not necessarily always the analysis. In fact, one thing that's been very, very helpful for fellows is to have feedback from their policy mentor about whether they're even framing their questions correctly, or not correctly, but adequately or appropriately. Making sure that the dissertation has the potential to answer some questions that might be, in fact, interesting or relevant to people working in the field are making decisions about this whatever the topic is. So we encourage you to talk with the fellows, for you guys to talk together about what the fellows doing in their dissertation. Look at their research questions, look at how they plan to answer those questions, make sure they're actually going to provide useful information to the field. Now, you know, dissertations are dissertations, so they aren't perfect pieces of research. I mean, there never is, but the fellow may not be able to incorporate everything that might be helpful, but they may be able to do something, or with some advice from you, they could tweak it a little bit to provide just something a little more useful to the field. And then obviously as a part of that also looking at analysis and helping with interpretation. You know, a fellow that hasn't been in the field for a long time may interpret results differently than you might. So we are hoping that you all engage in conversation about that over the 2 years of the fellowship program. Okay. Another role that that policy mentors play is to really provide help and support and guidance and advice about how to communicate research findings to non-academic audiences. So we talk about this a lot in the fellowship. The fellows will be exposed to workshops and presenters that really do talk about how to do this. We've found that one of the sort of difficult things for fellows to do is actually figure out an audience for that kind of writing. So obviously academic articles go in journals, and that's how that whole thing works. But if they have specific findings from their dissertation that they really do hope to get out to people in the field, people on the front lines, decision makers within organizations or agencies, often because fellows are often less engaged in the field or haven't been in it as long, their policy mentors can play a critical role in helping them access those audiences and help them write those documents. I mean, the fellow would write it, but then you can say, well, actually, you know, nobody knows what you're talking about here. You're using too much jargon. Or, you know, actually, they'd really be more interested in hearing about this, and this would really help them in their daily work. So that those communication discussions can be very helpful to fellows, and obviously, hopefully, to the folks that you all work with. Often, well, I'm going to talk about that part in a minute with the goal sheets. Okay, another role is to identify examples in your organization or in your field where research has been utilized. So we often have policy mentors who invite fellows to sit in on meetings, either at their organization or at their agencies, or like community-based kinds of meetings, either, you know, state task forces on whatever topic, or networking kind of groups. Whatever it is that you're involved in, consider whether that might be something that could benefit your fellow. And another thing, this is just really a discussion point that might be useful to your fellow, is to really talk about how you have used research in your organization before or not, or how it's gone well or like not gone well with partnering with researchers. And then the last one is to facilitate networking. I mentioned this, but this actually can be hugely beneficial to your fellow, to really introduce them to folks in your circle. I mean, we've had several different ways that's happened. People have introduced people they know that are researchers, and then fellows have ended up finding, you know, collaborators or people that they can work with on specific projects. We've had policy mentors introduce them to policymakers or decision makers that could utilize their research, or that's in an area that they're really interested in. We've had policy mentors introduce them to potential like job things, you know, like people that are hiring, or their contacts at different universities or different organizations. So just keep networking in mind as you work with your fellow. Okay, I'm going to turn now to the goal sheet. I think fellows have this goal sheet, is that right? They do, okay. So in case you didn't know, for the policy mentors, we ask that a goal sheet be filled out by each fellow in collaboration with their policy mentor, and those sent to us by August 31st. We use those to kind of check in with fellows throughout the year, make sure things are going well, if they need any support or help. So we ask for you guys to do these together. It is the fellows' responsibility to send it to us, just so you know. So the purpose, let me back up. Colleen may have said this, but we started this, I don't even remember what cohort it was, maybe cohort 4, because we wanted people, policy mentors and fellows kept asking for more structure to this mentoring relationship. So we created this based on some things we found that other mentoring programs were doing. It really is just to help you clarify, you know, your goals, like what you're doing together, why, you know, what your planned activities are. So let's look at what it looks like. Here's what it looks like. Well, obviously it has names and when you set your goals. And then I'm sure everybody's done this at work, right? Your SMART goals or whatever, like how you're going to achieve it, what you need to achieve it, and when you're going to get it done by. We consider these really living documents. You can update them as often as you need to. They're to help, it's a tool for you all to help clarify what you're doing in your relationship. Let's see. Yep, you guys all know what goals are. Your objectives are, you know, the strategies. Oh, there it says that. Goals should be SMART goals. Specific, measurable, achievable, results-focused, and time-bound. I am really not going to go into that because I feel as if we've probably all had a lot more discussion around what SMART goals are than any of us ever hope to have in our lives. Let me skip forward to talk about, well, did we include any examples, Sarah? That's okay. I'll just give you guys some examples. One goal that we would encourage everyone to include is how often you will communicate and in what way. So, you know, goal number 1 for almost every fellow is, you know, meet monthly by Skype on the 3rd Wednesday of every month or whatever it is. This also may be somewhere else in our slides, but we do also encourage you to set an agenda for those meetings. It may be 2 things, but it really helps focus the conversation. Other examples have been like co-presenting at a conference, for example. If you all are really engaged and work together already, or you plan to be, that may be one of your goals. One may be to, at every check-in, you all discuss dissertation questions or results and bounce those off of your policy mentor, and you guys discuss those. Often fellows and policy mentors have a goal to attend or to connect a fellow to an organization or a specific person or someone in a community. Co-presenting at a conference. Often there's a goal around dissemination. So like that you want to create, the fellow and the policy mentor, the fellow will create like an infographic, for example. The policy mentor will really provide feedback on the content and the language used in it. That's another common one. Sarah, can you think of any other common ones?
No, I think those are the most
okay.
common goals that we see.
Okay.
And yeah, as Leanne mentioned, these goal sheets can be revised throughout the year as needed if you want to add something or tweak something that's already been created. And I should say that the goal sheet document that fellows have does include some additional examples on it. I'm sorry for not including
them. No. It's written on the goal sheet document itself, so you'll see those. And you can always ask us, just email me or anybody and ask us if these look like good. If we get your goal sheet and they're awful goals, we'll let you guys know. We'll communicate that those aren't really the kinds of things that we're looking for. Okay, this is just really quickly some opportunities for engagement. Policy mentors, your main priority is just interacting with your fellow and providing mentorship. about how to make their research more relevant to the real world. But we have had policy mentors do a number of these things: facilitate a webinar for fellows, speak at a meeting. We would reach out to you if we want help with that. You can also feel free to let us know you'd love to do that if you want to. Attend receptions if we have, like Mickey mentioned, if you're in attendance at a conference where we have a reception, we would love to have you. Meet with this is a kind of big one that when people do it, it's really beneficial for you and the fellow and the academic mentor to meet together. If you're interested in that, we can provide help with like an agenda for what might take place during that meeting. We've heard back, like I said, it's been really beneficial for fellows that have done that. I mentioned before the small group projects. That actually is a really a great possibility. If you're interested in doing that, if you have projects or thoughts about something that a small group might be interested in, please let us know. And then the last one is really just like, you know, if you have a real passion for something and you'd love to have like a kind of a peer learning group or a discussion group with fellows that are also interested in that, like let us know, because we are always open to those kinds of ideas. All right, before I turn it over to Sarah and Taylor, let me make sure I've covered all of these sort of mentoring strategies. Yeah, clarifying expectations and goals. You guys should really be very open with each other about what you want, what you need, how often you can meet, what works best. If it's not working, I encourage policy mentors to let their fellows know and fellows to let their policy mentors know. That's too hard. Let us know and we can help with that. You know, make sure you talk to your fellow about what they want support with, where they feel like they really need guidance and advice. We talked about how frequently you'll contact, agree on communication strategies and techniques. Agree on confidentiality and boundaries. That is something you all should have a conversation about at the beginning of your relationship, just to make sure that you're on the same page with that. This is just any mentoring relationship. Just talk about how you talk to one another and how you communicate and what to do if you all are having difficulty in the relationship. Again, we are here to help with any of that. Okay, so I know you all are so tired of hearing my voice, so I am going to turn it over to Sarah, who is one of our fellows, and Taylor, her policy mentor, and they are going to introduce themselves and tell you some more about their relationship.
Hi, can you hear me now? This is Sarah.
Yes, Sarah, we can.
Okay, great. And is Taylor on as well?
Yes, hi, this is Taylor Scott.
Okay, I'll go ahead and introduce myself and then hand it over to Taylor.
Great.
So as Leanne mentioned, I'm Sarah Prendergast and I'm a Cohort 7 fellow. I'm a PhD candidate in Applied Developmental Science at Colorado State. And at a very broad level, my research focus is on early childhood. So in terms of risk and resilience, promoting school readiness and early childhood development, and then how to use evidence to inform and evaluate policies. Aside from my work at CSU, I'm currently working with the Colorado Office of Early Childhood on their Child Maltreatment Prevention Framework for Action, which Dr. Darrow and others at Chapin Hall actually helped to create. And then I'm also working with my policy mentor, Taylor, on the research to policy collaboration, which she will briefly discuss for you all in just a minute. And so first, before Taylor introduces herself, I wanted to share a little bit about how I began working with Taylor. Taylor and I were connected through one of the faculty in my department who heard about the research to policy collaboration, or as we refer to it sometimes, the RPC. And he thought it seemed like a good fit for me. So shortly after that, I interviewed to work with Taylor on the RPC, and from there, her mentorship really just naturally began through that role, and then more formally began once she became my mentor. Taylor wasn't my policy mentor I originally applied for the fellowship with, but after seeing how natural our relationship fell into place, I asked her to become my policy mentor and continued to work with her, and also my previous mentor, but with him more in a working capacity, and with Taylor in more of a working and mentoring capacity. And so Taylor and I work on quite a few different projects. We've actually been working together for over a year now, and those have ranged from congressional briefings to researching home visitation studies related to the maternal, infant, and early childhood home visiting legislation. Right now we're working on a project where we're coding legislation and statutes for research language. And so these are some projects that are even aside from my Doris Duke goals. So today we decided we would just kind of talk briefly through one example of our work, and which happens to be one of the goals for my Doris Duke Fellowship, and so that we can kind of explain how our mentoring relationship works through that. So Taylor, if you want to go ahead and introduce yourself and the RPC.
Yes, hi, I'm Taylor, and I work for Penn State University, and I work closely with Max Crowley on the Research to Policy collaboration, which emerged out of the National Prevention Science Coalition, which recognized the need for building stronger connections between researchers and policymakers based on what we know descriptively about how policymakers use research. And so essentially through that practice, we developed a model of facilitating researcher policymaker partnerships, which I'll describe in a moment. I have a background in community psychology, and in that program, I served on a program evaluation team for about 5 years. It gave me a lot of applied research experience, and it also gave me I guess my flavor of research background is really broad in that it's pretty adaptive to what decision makers need and want, but broadly focused on child and youth and family service systems. We did a lot of work on systems of care in the past, as well as just wraparound more generally. So since starting at Penn State, we've really been looking to do more work to understand policymakers' use of research evidence, and so we're actually beginning an evaluation of our work, and that will help us to contribute to both theory as well as some applied research on how we might facilitate better use of research and policy. And a lot of that has to do with mobilizing the research community. So these are all kind of woven into my research interests as a matter of our practice of the RPC. And I added a few bullets on people that we work with or centers that we work with, because the RPC is supported by a range of different organizations. And let me explain a little bit further on the next slide about what the RPC does. So we have 7 steps, and they're not this linear, you know, all figures are oversimplified in that way, and I won't go into detail on each one because of just our time limit, but the general notion is that researchers and policymakers tend to exist in relatively disparate communities where we have different professional cultures, and in order to facilitate these partnerships, we need to do a bit of capacity building. One of the most prominent barriers to policymakers' use of evidence is translation efforts that happen outside of their current policy priorities. And so in the legislative community, we really identify what their current work involves and how we can find opportunities for researchers to engage and support the current policy priorities. And in the research community, we look to identify research experts who have content area expertise that's relevant to those policy priorities. So we develop a network, and that's who we sort of reach out to in relation to those policy priorities. And we also support their growth of policy skills through training and coaching. And naturally, this has kind of transitioned into even a fellowship internship opportunity that we offer at this point, and that's how Sarah became involved with us, is because there's such a high level demand among junior scholars to get more applied research experiences and how to better understand how research can play a role in the policy arena. Ultimately, the RPC culminates by bringing these parties together face-to-face in a rapid response event where we plan an ongoing collaboration. And so that involves really trying to determine what sort of working project researchers can support as a way to continue that relationship, so it's not just like a one-off meeting. I think we can move to the next slide.
Okay, so we just wanted to share one example from our work together on the RPC. And so as part of my Doris Duke goal planning, Taylor and I came up with the goal to help plan a congressional briefing, because we thought it would really help me to learn how to efficiently respond to policymakers' needs by using research and by incorporating input from experts in the field, kind of through that rapid response type of experience Taylor was just describing. So we tried to select goals based on the skills I would want and need to have in my future career, and to help me gain experience with the skills that I learned in my program but don't necessarily get the chance to use in the real world. Things like translating research for non-academic audiences and then applying research to policies. So although we all learn how to write about what policy implications are of our research in my program, I don't really get the chance to see whether and how that research actually is used in the real world through policy making. So for my goal to plan a congressional briefing, it related to the Family First Prevention Services Act, which was first introduced in 2016 but didn't pass. Taylor had learned through some of her congressional contacts that it was going to be introduced again in 2018. And since it closely related to both congressional interests and my research interests, we decided it'd be a good briefing for me to help plan as part of my goal. Because I had already helped Taylor and the RPC with a briefing related to human trafficking last year, I knew some of the steps I would need to take to begin planning. But in terms of strategies for reaching this particular goal, Taylor and I typically meet about once a week or every other week. But during a time-intensive task like planning this briefing, we tended to meet at least once a week, sometimes more. And throughout that, Taylor would include me in other meetings that she had that would help me understand the context of the issues with the legislation and better understand what policymakers were needing to understand better through this briefing. In order to stay on track, we planned out the steps for reaching our goals and tracked our progress online using tools that the RPC has put in place. And so the first half of our meeting together includes us updating each other on our progress and planning out what the next steps will be. And then usually we also touch base on some of the other kind of more real world things happening in terms of legislation or other issues that are happening in the news. And then Taylor, if you want to talk a little about our communication and mentorship style.
Yeah, sure. As Sarah said, we are pretty adaptive. The policy arena is so dynamic in that things can change and suddenly shift under your feet overnight, like the Family First Prevention Services Act did, and this is why we're pivoting and planning a different briefing potentially related to CAPTA in the spring. And for those of you who don't know, CAPTA is the major child welfare bill at the federal level. It stands for Child Abuse Prevention and Treatment Act. So we communicate frequently, but it's on an as-needed basis. So, for instance, if there's tasks that we're working on together that don't require, a lot of adaption on a day-to-day basis, then we may meet less frequently. Generally, as a mentor, I try to do a lot of process checks because I want to make sure that these experiences are mutually beneficial. The last thing I want is for someone to be in a role where they're doing routine tasks or things that aren't actually meeting professional development goals. so that it's contributing more than just a CV line, but it's actually contributing to skill growth and development. And so I'm always looking for honest feedback and how we can adapt. One example of that is even communicating about communication, meta communication, what is working well in our working style. And one thing that Sarah and I have learned through those conversations is that we actually do pretty well of touching base via email. Even if there's a lot of details, we can sort of track things in a lengthy email. That doesn't work well for everyone. And so as a mentor, it's really necessary to be sort of adaptive and responsive to the people who are working with you. I think that about covers it. Is there anything else you wanted to cover, Sarah?
I think just two last points are that, as Taylor mentioned, maintaining flexibility, because as we kind of went over, the Family First Act, planning a congressional briefing was my goal for last year, but since it suddenly passed in the midst of planning, it's still a goal for this year. So I think just making sure that you're maintaining flexibility with your goals and what you expect to get out of your mentor relationship. And then lastly, Taylor was really great about having natural mentoring throughout our work and different projects we were working on, but she also worked with me on more structured mentoring. So at one point, myself and some of the other interns wanted to hear from some applied researchers in the field now. And so she convened a call with former SRCD fellows, someone at Child Trends, who was previously at ACF. And so those kind of experiences were really great in terms of getting both natural mentoring, but also thinking through what structured mentor I would need for my future career.
Well, the feedback was really important because I knew people who are working with me were interested in policy careers, but to hear Sarah and a couple of other people say, we want some explicit attention to understanding how to navigate career paths, we paid attention to that feedback and were responsive.
Yes, I think that's pretty much everything we had to cover, other than the last slide is our contact information if any fellows wanted to reach out or mentors wanted to reach out to either of us or have any questions for us to answer now.
Mm-hmm. And the last link is for our new website. It is still kind of emerging, so I think that we've put a lot of content there that describes our work a lot further. One other mention is that we will be replicating the RPC in the child welfare space, especially focusing on 2019 as an implementation year. And as part of that work, we will be evaluating it, and consequently, we are looking to hire people. And I think that I encourage folks who are on the call who are thinking about job opportunities to consider such opportunities if you're in the right place in terms of dissertation stage and things like that. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to reach out.
Thank you so much, Sarah and Taylor. It was so wonderful to hear about your relationship and what's been working well for you all, and what how you've worked together on so many exciting projects. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks everybody. So I don't know if I said this earlier, but if you have questions, I should have said it earlier if I didn't, but you can type them into the box and we can answer those, or you can do that fancy thing where you raise your hand and we can unmute you and you can ask us questions. I'm trying to think if there's anything else that we didn't cover. Hopefully our slides covered everything. I would be probably your primary point of contact moving forward. This is Leanne. So if you have any questions after this, let me know. Again, as you work on the goal sheet, your fellows all have a copy of that goal sheet, I think. As you work on that, if you all have questions about what appropriate goals are, any advice or need help with that, just let us know. We can help you. We can provide you lots of examples of what other fellows have done. But it looks like we don't have any questions, so we will go ahead and end the webinar. I know it's super exciting to have webinars end early. So we'll end. We thank you all for participating in the fellowship program. Hopefully it's a really good experience for everybody, and let us know if you need anything. Thank you.